It started as an ordinary day at Meadow Ridge Academy, a quaint private school nestled on the outskirts of the new Denver colony. Students bustled between classes, their laughter and chatter blending with the rustling of trees swaying in the artificial breeze of the terraformed atmosphere. Teachers shuffled through their notes, occasionally calling out warnings to stragglers in the hallways. Among the students was Alara Voss, a senior whose knack for problem-solving had earned her the nickname the Engineer. Her love for tinkering was evident in the small mechanical gadgets she often carried, and she could frequently be found in the school's workshop, piecing together something new. Alara was busy soldering a broken drone during her lunch break when her best friend, Milo Carter, barged in. Let me guess, Alara said without looking up, her tone laced with mock exasperation. You broke another one of Mr. Dorn's hover scooters? This is serious, Milo insisted, pulling out his tablet and shoving it in front of her. The screen displayed a live feed of the school grounds, captured by one of the campus's surveillance drones. A strange, sleek craft hovered just beyond the perimeter fence, its angular design glowing faintly with a pulsating green light. Alara frowned, setting down her tools. That's not a delivery shuttle. No kidding, Milo said, his voice a mix of awe and fear. Do you think it's alien? The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Alien sightings weren't unheard of, but hostile encounters were rare since the Treaty of Seoul had established a fragile peace between humanity and its neighboring species. Yet the sight of the craft set off alarm bells in Alara's mind. I need to see this for myself, she said, grabbing her toolkit and heading for the door. Outside, the school grounds were buzzing with nervous energy. Students whispered in groups, pointing at the strange ship. Teachers tried to maintain order, ushering everyone toward the main building. Principal Mallory, a stout woman with a commanding presence, stood near the front steps, her face grim as she communicated with local authorities. Alara, what's going on? Asked Emma Reeve, another student who had joined the growing crowd. Alara barely heard her, her focus locked on the craft. It hovered silently, its design unfamiliar even to someone like her, who had studied countless schematics of spacecraft in her spare time. It's just sitting there, Milo said, standing beside her. Why isn't anyone coming out? That's what worries me, Alara muttered. She noticed the subtle shimmer of a force field surrounding the craft. Whatever this was, it wasn't friendly. Before anyone could react further, the craft's underside opened with a hiss, releasing a metallic ramp that extended to the ground. A figure emerged, tall and imposing, encased in armor that seemed to shift and ripple like liquid metal. Its insectoid features, sharp mandibles, multiple glowing eyes, and clawed limbs, drew gasps and cries from the onlookers. It's a Zyrixian, Milo whispered, his voice trembling. The Zyrixians were a predatory race, notorious for their cunning and ruthlessness. Though they had been absent from interstellar politics for decades, their reputation as warmongers lingered. Alara's heart raced as the alien raised a device resembling a staff. With a sharp crackle, it activated, sending a pulse of energy that knocked out the school's power grid. The hum of the artificial breeze died, replaced by an eerie silence. Lights flickered and went dark, and the students' whispers turned to panicked cries. Principal Mallory stepped forward, her voice firm despite the tension. This is private property. You have no jurisdiction here. State your intentions or... The Zyrixians silenced her with a guttural hiss. It spoke in a harsh, clicking language, but its meaning was clear as the translation software in Alara's earpiece struggled to keep up. Subjects acquired. Eliminate resistance. The words chilled Alara to the bone. The Zyrixian raised its staff again, this time firing a bolt of energy that narrowly missed Principal Mallory, instead obliterating a nearby fountain. Students screamed and scattered, while the staff and faculty scrambled to usher them indoors. Get to the building, Milo shouted, tugging at Alara's arm. But she resisted, her mind racing as she analyzed the situation. This isn't just an attack, she said. It's a test. What kind of test? Milo asked, his voice tight with fear. A Zyrixian wouldn't come alone, Alara replied, her eyes narrowing. It's testing us, our response, our weaknesses. And if we don't fight back, we're all dead. The stakes are set. As chaos erupted, Alara's resolve hardened. She grabbed Milo and Emma and led them toward the workshop, ignoring their protests. Inside, she locked the door and began rummaging through her tools and scrap materials. "We're not soldiers, Alara," Emma said, her voice shaking. "What can we do?" "We're not fighting it head-on," Alara said, pulling out a half-assembled drone from her workbench. "We outthink it. Zyrixians are brutal, but they're not invincible. They rely on intimidation and brute force. If we can outsmart this thing, we might stand a chance." Milo glanced at the drone. "What are you planning?" "A distraction," Alara said, her fingers flying as she modified the drone. "If we can buy enough time, we can figure out what it wants, and maybe stop it." Emma and Milo exchanged nervous glances but ultimately nodded, their fear giving way to determination. They began to assist Alara, their movements clumsy but earnest. Outside, the Zyrixians stalked the school grounds, its staff crackling with energy as it targeted any remaining stragglers. Principal Mallory and the faculty had managed to secure most of the students in the main building, but the aliens' presence loomed like a shadow over their safety. From the workshop window, Alara watched as the Zyrixian approached the building. Her modified drone hovered beside her, its circuits glowing faintly. "Here goes nothing," she said, releasing the drone into the air. It zipped toward the alien, its small frame barely noticeable. As it neared the Zyrixian, the drone emitted a high-pitched whine before exploding in a burst of light and sound. The alien recoiled, momentarily disoriented. Alara used the distraction to sprint toward the main building, Milo and Emma close behind. Inside, the students huddled in the gymnasium, their faces pale with fear. Principal Mallory intercepted Alara as she entered, her expression a mix of relief and anger. "What are you doing out there?" Mallory demanded. "I told everyone to stay put. I'm trying to keep us alive," Alara shot back. "That thing isn't here by accident. It's testing us, and if we don't act, it's going to kill us all." Mallory hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "What do you need?" Alara took a deep breath. "Every bit of tech we can find. Tablets, communicators, anything with circuits. If we're going to outsmart that thing, we'll need every resource we've got." As the students and faculty scrambled to gather supplies, Alara's mind worked at a frenetic pace. She didn't know why the Zyrixian had chosen their school, but she was determined to make sure it didn't leave with whatever it wanted. For the first time, humanity's true strength wasn't in its military might or its advanced weaponry. It was in its adaptability, in the ability of a group of terrified students to stand together against an alien predator and fight back with whatever they had. But as the Zyrixian's menacing silhouette appeared in the doorway of the gymnasium, its glowing eyes scanning the room, Alara knew their real battle was just beginning. The gymnasium fell silent as the Zyrixian stepped inside, its towering frame blocking out the light from the hallway. Its glowing eyes scanned the huddled students and faculty, the flicker of its energy staff casting ominous shadows on the walls. Alara, crouched near the supply tables, felt her breath catch as the alien's gaze swept past her. Principal Mallory stepped forward cautiously, her hands raised in what she hoped would be perceived as a gesture of peace. "We mean you no harm," she said, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. "If you're here to negotiate, we're willing to listen." The Zyrixian's response was swift and brutal. With a sharp click of its mandibles, it raised its staff and fired a blast of energy that struck the floor just inches from Mallory's feet. The principal stumbled back, the heat and force of the blast leaving a charred crater where she had stood. Chaos erupted. The first challenge. The students screamed, scattering toward the far corners of the gymnasium. Teachers scrambled to herd them to safety, using overturned tables and benches as makeshift barriers. Alara, Milo, and Emma ducked behind a stack of gym mats, their hearts pounding as the Zyrixian advanced. "We can't just sit here," Alara hissed, her mind racing. "If we wait, it'll pick us off one by one. What do you suggest?" Milo whispered, his voice tight with panic. "We've got nothing that can take that thing down." "Not yet," Alara replied, her tone sharp. "But we can buy time." She glanced at Emma, who clutched a small communicator. "Can you rig that to send a wideband distress signal?" Emma blinked, her hands trembling. I think so, but it'll take a minute." "Do it," Alara said. "Milo, help me find something. Anything we can use as a weapon. The trio crawled through the chaos, dodging stray energy blasts as the Zyrixians systematically destroyed barriers and herded the students into tighter spaces. Its movements were deliberate, almost surgical, as if it were gauging their reactions. Alera's mind worked furiously as she scavenged. Broken chairs, shattered electronics, pieces of gym equipment. None of it seemed useful. Then she spotted the emergency fire suppression system mounted on the wall. That could work, she muttered, motioning to Milo. The extinguisher? Milo asked, his brow furrowing. What good is that going to do? It's not the extinguisher. It's the system, Alera explained. If we can trigger it, it'll flood the gym with suppressant foam. It won't hurt the Zyrixian, but it'll mess with its visibility. Milo nodded, his fear giving way to determination. What do you need? The counterattack. While Emma worked on the distress signal, Alera and Milo maneuvered toward the fire suppression panel, keeping low to avoid detection. The Zyrixians' attention was focused on a group of teachers who had barricaded themselves near the far wall, their futile attempts to fight back with improvised weapons only serving to distract it. When they reached the panel, Alera quickly pried it open with a multi-tool from her pocket. Keep an eye on it, she whispered to Milo, her hands flying over the controls. If it turns this way. I know, Milo interrupted, clutching a broken chair leg as if it would offer any protection. Alera bypassed the panel's security protocols with a few deft movements. Almost there, she muttered. Just keep it busy. The Zyrixian, however, seemed to sense something amiss. It turned abruptly, its glowing eyes narrowing as it scanned the room. Alera froze, her fingers hovering over the final command. Milo acted on instinct. Grabbing a nearby basketball, he hurled it at the alien with all his strength. The ball struck the Zyrixian's armored chest and bounced harmlessly away, but it succeeded in drawing its attention. Come on, you oversized bug. Milo shouted, waving his arms. You want to fight? Try me. The Zyrixian snarled, raising its staff to fire. But before it could, Alera hit the final switch. The fire suppression system roared to life, releasing a torrent of thick white foam that filled the gymnasium within seconds. The Zyrixian recoiled, its sensors overwhelmed as the foam coated its armor and obscured its vision. The students and faculty seized the opportunity to retreat further, regrouping behind the bleachers. Milo stumbled back, coughing as the foam enveloped him. I think it worked, he called out. Not for long, Alera replied, grabbing his arm and pulling him toward the others. Let's go. A desperate plan. Back behind the bleachers, Emma had finished rigging the communicator. She handed it to Alera, her face pale. It's broadcasting on all frequencies. If anyone's listening, they'll hear us. Good, Alera said, glancing toward the Zyrixian, which was already regaining its composure. Now we just need to keep it busy until help arrives. Principal Mallory, who had joined the group, shook her head. You're assuming help is coming. What if it doesn't? Alera met her gaze, her jaw set. Then we make sure it doesn't leave here alive. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, but no one argued. It was clear to everyone that this was no ordinary encounter. The Zyrixian wasn't just attacking. It was studying them, testing their limits. And if it succeeded, there was no telling what it would do next. The alien's countermove. The Zyrixian, now free of the foam, let out a guttural roar that sent a chill through the room. It slammed its staff into the ground, sending out a shockwave that shattered the remaining barriers and sent the defenders sprawling. It's adapting, Emma said, her voice trembling. It knows we're trying to slow it down. Then we adapt faster, Alera replied, her mind racing. She spotted a stack of gym weights nearby and motioned to Milo. Help me rig those into a trap. What kind of trap? Milo asked, his voice rising. One that'll give us an opening, Alera said. Just trust me. A glimmer of hope. As Alera and Milo worked on their makeshift trap, the Zyrixian advanced on the huddled students, its staff crackling with energy. Principal Mallory stepped forward again, her expression defiant despite the odds. You've already proven your strength, she said, her voice loud and clear. What more do you want? The Zyrixian paused, tilting its head as if considering her words. Then, in a chillingly deliberate motion, It pointed its staff at the nearest student, a young boy no older than 10. "No," Mallory shouted, moving to shield the child. At that moment, Alara's trap sprang to life. The gym weights, rigged to a rope system, came crashing down from the ceiling, striking the Zyrixian and sending it sprawling. Its staff clattered to the ground, the crackling energy fading. "No," Alara shouted. Milo and Emma rushed forward, using foam-coated gym mats to pin the alien down while Alara grabbed its staff. The weapon hummed in her hands, its alien design unfamiliar but intuitive. "You're not as invincible as you think," Alara muttered, aiming the staff at the Zyrixian. The tide turns. The Zyrixian thrashed against its restraints, but the combined efforts of the students and teachers held it in place. Alara kept the staff trained on it, her finger hovering over the activation trigger. "We've got it," Milo said, his voice breathless. "What now?" Alara's mind raced. The staff was their only leverage, but she had no idea how long they could hold the alien down, or whether their distress signal had been received. "We hold the line," she said finally. "And we remind it why humans aren't easy prey." As the Zyrixians snarled and struggled, Alara felt a flicker of something she hadn't experienced since the attack began: hope. They weren't just surviving. They were fighting back. And for the first time, it felt like they might actually win. The gymnasium was a war zone. Students and teachers crouched behind overturned tables and scattered equipment, their faces pale with fear and resolve. The Zyrixian's struggles against its makeshift restraints grew more violent with each passing second. Its sharp mandibles clicked in frustration, and its glowing eyes scanned the room for any weakness to exploit. Alara Voss tightened her grip on the alien staff, its unfamiliar weight an unsettling reminder of the predator she now faced. The weapon thrummed faintly in her hands, its alien design unlike anything she'd seen before. Yet, she had no time to marvel at its craftsmanship. The Zyrixian's glowing exoskeleton shimmered ominously, signaling that it was regaining its strength. "This isn't going to hold much longer," Milo warned, glancing nervously at the foam-covered mats they'd used to pin the alien down. "What's the plan, Alara?" Alara's mind raced. "We can't hold it here forever. If it breaks free, we're done for." Emma, kneeling anyway. "We can't count on that," Alara replied grimly. "We need to end this ourselves." The alien strikes back. Before Alara could explain further, the Zyrixian let out a guttural roar that echoed through the gym. With a sudden burst of strength, it tore free of its restraints, sending the foam-covered mats flying. Milo and Emma scrambled back, barely avoiding its lashing claws. "Scatter!" Alara shouted, instinctively raising the alien's staff. She fired a burst of energy at the Zyrixian, the weapon's recoil nearly knocking her off balance. The blast struck the alien's armored chest, causing it to stagger but not fall. The Zyrixian hissed in fury, its mandibles clicking menacingly. It turned its glowing eyes toward Alara, clearly identifying her as the greatest threat. With alarming speed, it lunged. "Alara, move!" Milo screamed. She barely dodged in time, the alien's claws raking through the air where she'd stood. Rolling to her feet, she fired another shot, this time aiming for its legs. The blast hit its mark, causing the Zyrixian to stumble, but it recovered quickly. "We can't keep this up," Emma yelled, ducking behind a table as the alien swung its staff, sending a bolt of energy in her direction. Alara's mind worked furiously. The Zyrixian was faster and stronger than them, but it wasn't invincible. Every time it recovered from an attack, it seemed slower, its movements less precise. She realized that their constant resistance was wearing it down. "We need to outlast it," Alara said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Keep moving. Don't let it focus on one target." Turning the gym into a battlefield. Under Alara's direction, the defenders turned the gym into a maze of distractions and obstacles. Teachers and older students worked quickly to overturn tables, stack chairs, and scatter gym equipment, creating makeshift barricades. Milo grabbed a fire extinguisher and used it to create bursts of foam, further disorienting the alien. Emma, still clutching the communicator, climbed onto the bleachers and began transmitting updates through the distress signal. "This is Emma Reeve at Meadowridge Academy. We're under attack by a Zyrixian hostile. We need immediate assistance." Please respond. The Zyrixian roared in frustration, its movements growing more erratic as it struggled to navigate the chaotic battlefield. It fired its staff wildly, sending bolts of energy that ricocheted off walls and shattered barriers. But the defenders were no longer cowering. They were fighting back. Alara used the alien staff to fire precise shots, forcing the Zyrixian to retreat whenever it got too close. Milo and a group of students threw sports equipment and fire suppression foam to keep it off balance. Even Principal Mallory joined the effort, her commanding voice rallying the younger students to safety. A high-stakes gamble. Despite their efforts, the Zyrixian adapted quickly. It began targeting the defenders' strongest positions, focusing its attacks on the areas where students and teachers had gathered. Each blast of its staff pushed them further into a corner, their options dwindling. Alara realized they needed a decisive move. She spotted the alien's ship through the shattered gymnasium windows, its force field shimmering faintly. If they could destroy the craft, it might force the Zyrixian to retreat, or at least cut off its escape. Milo, she called, her voice urgent. We need to take out that ship. Milo glanced at the alien, which was now clawing its way toward the bleachers where Emma was still broadcasting. How? It's shielded, and we've barely got anything left. Alara held up the alien staff. This is our best shot. If I can get close enough, I might be able to overload the shield. That's suicide. Milo protested. It'll tear you apart before you get there. Not if we distract it, Alara replied, determination hardening her features. Can I count on you? Milo hesitated, then nodded. You're insane, but I'm with you. The final push. Alara explained her plan quickly. While she made a break for the alien ship, Milo and the others would keep the Zyrixian occupied. Emma would stay on the bleachers, continuing to broadcast in case reinforcements arrived. As the group sprang into action, Alara sprinted toward the broken windows, the alien staff glowing faintly in her hands. Behind her, Milo and the others unleashed a barrage of distractions, throwing foam, firing makeshift projectiles, and shouting to draw the Zyrixian's attention. The alien roared in frustration, its focus shifting between the defenders and Alara's retreating form. It fired a bolt of energy toward her, but she ducked just in time, the blast narrowly missing her and shattering the window frame. Come on, you oversized bug. Milo shouted, waving his arms to keep the alien distracted. You're going to have to do better than that. A desperate gambit. Alara reached the alien ship, her heart pounding as she approached the shimmering force field. Up close, the craft was even more intimidating, its sleek surface glowing faintly with alien runes. She could feel the hum of its energy field, a steady vibration that made her skin crawl. Taking a deep breath, she raised the staff and aimed for the center of the field. The weapon thrummed in her hands, its energy building to a crescendo as she fired. The blast struck the force field, sending ripples of light across its surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening crack, the shield collapsed. The alien's defeat. The Zyrixian let out a furious screech as its ship's defenses failed. It turned away from the defenders, charging toward Alara in a last-ditch effort to stop her. Alara didn't hesitate. She fired the staff again, this time targeting the ship's core. The blast hit its mark, and the craft erupted in a plume of fire and debris. The shockwave sent her sprawling, but she managed to roll to her feet, adrenaline fueling her every movement. The Zyrixian staggered, its glowing exoskeleton dimming as the destruction of its ship weakened it. It collapsed to one knee, its energy staff flickering before going dark. Victory! Alara approached cautiously, the alien staff still glowing in her hands. The Zyrixian glared at her, its mandibles clicking weakly. For a moment, she considered finishing it off. But as she stood over the defeated alien, she realized it was no longer a threat. This is humanity, she said, her voice steady. We're not prey. And we're not afraid of you. The Zyrixian hissed one final time before slumping forward, its body going still. Cheers erupted from the gym as the students and teachers realized the battle was over. Milo ran to Alara's side, his face a mix of relief and awe. You did it, he said breathlessly. You actually did it. Alara nodded, her grip on the alien staff tightening. We all did. The defenders of Meadow Ridge Academy had stood against an enemy that should have overwhelmed them. Against all odds, they had won, and in doing so, they had reminded the galaxy of humanity's greatest strength, its unyielding determination. The silence after the battle was deafening. The shattered gymnasium, once filled with chaos and terror, now stood as a testament to what the students and faculty of Meadow Ridge Academy had endured. Smoke from the alien ship's wreckage billowed into the sky, mingling with the acrid scent of scorched foam and burned equipment. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Alara Voss sat on the gym floor, leaning against a broken table, the alien staff resting across her lap. Her arms ached, her clothes were singed, and her heart was still pounding from the fight. Around her, students and teachers emerged from their hiding places, their faces pale but their eyes bright with relief.
"You okay?"
Milo asked, dropping down beside her. His usually upbeat demeanor was subdued, his hands trembling slightly as he pushed a lock of hair out of his face. "I will be," Alara replied, managing a faint smile. "What about everyone else?" "Bruised and shaken, but alive," Milo said. He paused, glancing toward the collapsed form of the Zyrixian. "I can't believe we actually beat it." Alara followed his gaze. The alien's lifeless body lay in the center of the gym, its once glowing exoskeleton dull and cracked. Even in death, it radiated an unsettling presence, a reminder of how close they had come to annihilation. The aftermath. Emma Reeve climbed down from the bleachers, her communicator still clutched tightly in her hands. She approached Alara, her expression a mix of exhaustion and hope. "The distress signal worked," Emma said. "I got a reply just before the ship blew up. A nearby patrol is on its way." Alara nodded, relief washing over her. "Good. We'll need someone to clean up this mess." Principal Mallory joined them, her usually stern face softened by gratitude. "You saved us, Alara," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "If it weren't for you and your team, we wouldn't be standing here." "It wasn't just me," Alara said quickly. "Everyone played a part." Mallory placed a hand on her shoulder. "You led us when no one else could. That's what matters." Unanswered questions. As the survivors worked to clear the gym and tend to the injured, Alara couldn't shake the nagging questions in her mind. Why had the Zyrixian come here? What had it been looking for? And was it truly alone? Her thoughts were interrupted by Milo, who had been inspecting the alien's remains. "Alara, you need to see this," he said, his voice tinged with unease. Alara rose, her muscles protesting, and crossed the room to where Milo stood. He pointed to the Zyrixian's chest, where a small, glowing device was embedded. The alien staff hummed faintly in her hands as she approached, as if reacting to the proximity of the device. "What is it?" she asked. Milo shook his head. "No idea. But it doesn't look like a weapon." Alara crouched beside the alien and examined the device. It pulsed with a soft, rhythmic glow, its surface etched with alien runes. Carefully, she used the staff to pry it loose. The moment it was free, the staff dimmed, its power seemingly depleted. "Looks like it was connected to the staff," Milo observed. "Maybe it's a power source?" "Or a beacon," Alara said grimly, cradling the device in her hands. "This might be why it came here." A dangerous revelation. By the time the patrol ships arrived, the survivors had gathered in the courtyard outside the gym. The sight of the armored shuttles descending from the sky brought a wave of relief, but Alara's mind remained focused on the glowing device in her hands. A group of uniformed officers disembarked from the lead shuttle, their weapons drawn as they scanned the area. The lead officer, a tall woman with sharp features, approached Principal Mallory and saluted. "Come in." "Most of us," Mallory replied. "Thanks to these students, we managed to survive." Commander Varen's gaze shifted to Alara, who stepped forward, the alien device still in her hands. "We found this on the Zyrixian," she said, holding it out. "I think it's important." Varen's eyes narrowed as she examined the device. "Where exactly did you find this?" "It was embedded in its chest," Alara explained. "It seemed connected to its staff." Varen's expression darkened. "We've seen these before. They're not just beacons, they're data nodes." This Zyrixian was collecting information. "Information on what?" Alara asked. Varen hesitated before answering. On humanity. These devices scan and record everything. Tactics, weaknesses, strategies. It wasn't here to destroy your school. It was here to study you. A grim warning. The revelation sent a chill through the survivors. The Zyrixian hadn't been an isolated threat. It was part of something larger. Why would they target us? Milo asked. We're just a school. Because schools are microcosms of society, Varen replied. They're places of learning, growth, and innovation. If they can understand how humanity develops, they can predict how we'll fight. Alara Seal. We take this fight to them, Varen said. You've shown incredible courage here today. The galaxy needs to know what you've accomplished, and it needs to prepare. A legacy of strength. As the patrol ships secured the area and the survivors began to board, Alara lingered near the remains of the alien ship. The glowing device still pulsed faintly in her hands, a reminder of the battle they had fought, and the battles yet to come. Milo joined her, his expression thoughtful. You think this is over? No, Alara said. But we'll be ready, Milo said with a small smile. Alara nodded. We'll always be ready. Epilogue. Nuzo. For Alara, Milo, Emma, and the others, the battle was more than just a fight for survival. It was a reminder of humanity's greatest strength, the ability to adapt, to unite, and to overcome even the most daunting challenges. As the patrol ships departed, carrying the survivors to safety, Alara looked out at the distant stars. Somewhere out there, the Zyrixians were watching, planning their next move. But so was humanity. And this time they would be ready.